Hi, I'm B from Nectar Mechanics, and in today's video, I'm going to be building a giant robot entirely out of scrap and trash. And I'll show you all the tips and tricks I've learned so you can make one yourself. So if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I do an awful lot of 3D printing. But did you know I did a lot of kit bashing beforehand? That's right, it was one of my favorite things to do. So today I want to go back to my roots and have a go at making a giant kit bash robot. And hopefully I can give you some tips so you can make one yourself. The issue I tend to run into when making characters or models of my own this way though, is it's quite easy to get overloaded by all the different pieces. So before I even think of touching any of my scraps, I'm going to do a concept sketch. This is not going to be a design I follow too strictly. My main goal with this is to get an idea for the silhouette, the rough character proportions, and colours. I also find that a basic story always helps with my original characters. So this lad's part of a world of fighting robots and is one of the biggest of them all. It's difficult to power him up since he's so large, but if you do happen to see him on the opposite side of the battlefield, you want to get away as quick as you can. With this story in mind, I make sure he's got big lanky limbs and a menacing head sculpt. Not to mention, this robot world he's part of is fighting and energy deprived, so there's a lot of asymmetry and damaged pieces to it. So with all that out of the way, it's time to start building. To start off with, I look for pieces I think are going to match with the vague shapes in my artwork. Now, I want this bot to be posable, so I'm going to make sure he's got a wire skeleton, and then using hot glue, I start building on top of it with my trash. Hot glue is not really ideal for gluing plastics together, but if you sand the pieces beforehand, I find it works good enough, and it's a lot cheaper than the plastic glues that you'll find online. From here, it's basically a strange puzzle. I'm trying to get all these random pieces to all sort of connect and look coherent with one another. Since I'm planning on painting this model, I'm not too worried about the colours matching. I'm just looking for the shape and flow of it all. If there's one tip I can share for people new to kit bashing, it's that. Focus on the flow. As I'm building my bot up, I'm making sure to stop and have a look at the overall build. The gestalt, if you will. If something seems off, that's where I need to focus next. My favourite metaphor for this is the cooking eye. When you first cook a dish that's brand new to you, you might have a recipe or a teacher to get you started, but you don't know what it's supposed to taste like, what it's supposed to look like, right? But the more you cook that dish, the more you start getting that intuition and cooking eye for it. I'm not saying practice makes perfect, but I am saying practice makes better. So now that I'm finished with my legs and working up the body, it's time to make a start on the head. Doing the head once the torso is mostly worked out means I can easily get the proportions correct. So now it's painting time. This is going to turn our robot from looking like a bunch of trash into a mecha warrior. First thing I'm going to do is a black primer on everything. This is going to make sure that all of my paint actually sticks to the plastic, and it also gives me a load of shading for all the bits that I might miss later on. Once that's had plenty of time to dry, it's time to do the base coats. Now, I'm using an airbrush here, but you can totally do this by hand. I've done that plenty of times with just acrylics and brushes. I'm just using the airbrush because it's a lot quicker. Now, like I said before, I'm not being too strict to adhering to my reference material, so my shades of red and blue are not quite exact, but they're close enough. Now, I know I always say that painting's my favorite part of the project, but actually my favorite part is the weathering, because that turns it from looking like a sort of model or character or whatever into something that looks real and believable. See, I want this robot to look old and battle damaged, so I'm going to take some black paint, thin it with a load of water, and then mush it in all the gaps, giving it an oily, dirty look. I'm also going to do the same with some dark browns for variety, and then I move on to the dry brushing. For dry brushing, I use brighter tones and wipe off as much paint off my brush as I can till it's almost, well, dry. And then I just tickle the edges, helping the plates of metal all stand out from one another. Whenever I do a project like this, I think of two things. What is the object's story, and do I understand that object? The object's story doesn't have to be any more complicated than just, he's a battle-worn robot that's seen plenty of action. The understanding part is why I like weathering so much. The dry brushing adds highlights, the washes add shading, and suddenly, like a 2D drawing, I could understand the model way better. Not to mention, the story can influence the kind of damage marks I make. He wasn't in a hot climate, so no sun damage, not in a super cold area, so no frost marks, just scuffed metal and dirt from improper storage when he was offline. It really doesn't take much to just stop, sit back, and write a 2-sentence story about whatever it is you're making. Suddenly, it's gonna make the whole process a lot easier. Trust me, I found out the hard way. So now that the painting's all done, I don't think there's much left to do than have a look at the final results. I'm so chuffed with how this robot turned out. Kit bashing is one of my favourite ways of making hard-edged models, and I really want to do more of it this year. If this video helped give you any tips and whatnot to help make your own robots, then please let me know down in the comments. And also, should we name this guy? He's just kind of been called the Big Robot, and I feel like he needs a proper name. So, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, feel free to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Farewell!